When Donald Trump stormed into the political arena in 2016, he promised to drain the swamp. He claimed he was the outsider who would break the grip of Washington insiders, lobbyists, and globalists who had, for decades, manipulated the American government for their own ends. But was it all just political theater? What if the very forces Trump vowed to fight were the ones pulling strings behind the scenes of his legislative agenda? From Wall Street billionaires to secretive think tanks, from foreign interests to shadowy corporate donors, this is the story of the hidden hands that shaped the Trump presidency, and possibly the future of American democracy. Trump built his campaign on the identity of an outsider, a businessman, not a politician, someone who couldn't be bought. But behind the scenes, Trump was never truly outside the system. He was deeply connected to it. A real estate mogul with ties to international financiers, casino magnates, and old money elites. His name was a brand, and that brand was supported by decades of deals, favors, and connections, some legal, some shadowy. During the 2016 campaign, Trump promised to fight lobbyists. Yet shortly after winning, his transition team was filled with them. According to reports, over 70 registered lobbyists were placed on Trump's transition team to help shape his administration and pick key cabinet members. One of the most telling examples? Michael Catanzaro, a former energy lobbyist, was appointed to oversee energy policy. He had lobbied for major oil companies like Devon Energy and Encana, and then helped write Trump's environmental deregulation policies. The swamp wasn't drained, it was rearranged. Trump's cabinet was one of the wealthiest in U.S. history. Wilbur Ross, Betsy DeVos, Steve Mnuchin, each a billionaire or multimillionaire. Collectively, they were worth over $4.3 billion. But these weren't self-made populists. They were representatives of corporate empires with long-standing ties to lobbying firms, tax shelters, and global finance. Let's look at Steve Mnuchin. Before becoming Treasury Secretary, he worked for Goldman Sachs and ran a hedge fund that profited off the 2008 housing crash. He was accused of aggressively foreclosing on homeowners through his bank, OneWest. As Treasury Secretary, Mnuchin played a crucial role in shaping Trump's tax policies that disproportionately benefited corporations and the ultra-wealthy. Betsy DeVos, Secretary of Education, was a longtime advocate for school privatization. Her family donated millions to Republican campaigns. She pushed policies that favored charter schools and private education, policies that critics say weakened public schools and funneled taxpayer money into for-profit systems. Was this the work of populists? Or was it the quiet victory of the corporate elite? To understand the deeper influences behind Trump's laws, we must examine ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. ALEC is a powerful organization where corporate representatives and conservative lawmakers meet behind closed doors to draft model legislation. These laws are then introduced in state houses and sometimes echoed at the federal level. Though not directly affiliated with Trump, many of his allies, like Mike Pence, had deep ties to ALEC. Pence, Trump's vice president, had been an ALEC loyalist during his time as governor of Indiana. ALEC pushed for deregulation, tax cuts for corporations, the dismantling of environmental protections, and aggressive voter ID laws. Sound familiar? Trump's legislative agenda mirrored these goals almost perfectly. The 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act slashed the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%. Environmental protections were gutted, including Obama-era climate policies. Voting rights came under scrutiny as Trump falsely claimed millions voted illegally. Many of these ideas weren't new. They were waiting fully drafted in ALEC's files, funded by the Koch brothers and other powerful interests. The Koch brothers, Charles and the late David Koch, built one of the most influential political donor networks in American history. They funded think tanks, universities, and policy shops that shaped the conservative movement for decades. Though initially hesitant about Trump, the Koch network quickly adapted. Key figures in Trump's administration had Koch ties. Mark Short, Trump's legislative affairs director, was a former president of Freedom Partners, a Koch-funded group. Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State, was once dubbed the congressman from Koch for receiving more Koch donations than any other politician. The Koch agenda, limited government, low taxes, minimal regulation, was reflected in Trump's policies, especially the tax cuts and environmental rollbacks. While Trump distracted the public with tweets and culture wars, the Koch network quietly celebrated the successful implementation of their long-term goals. Another powerful influence was AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, and broader pro-Israel lobbying forces in Washington. Under Trump, U.S. policy toward Israel took a sharp turn. The U.S. Embassy was moved to Jerusalem, a symbolic win for the Israeli right. Trump recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Military aid continued, with little accountability for how it was used. Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, had deep ties to Israeli investors and Zionist organizations. He helped broker the Abraham Accords, deals that normalized relations between Israel and several Arab nations, further cementing U.S.-Israeli ties. Meanwhile, critics pointed to a lack of balance. The Palestinian cause was sidelined, and humanitarian concerns were largely ignored. Was this about diplomacy? Or was it about appeasing powerful donors and interest groups? Wall Street had a banner 4 years under Trump. The Dow Jones hit record highs. Bank regulations were rolled back, and financial institutions grew even more powerful. The 2018 rollback of Dodd-Frank protections, originally put in place after the 2008 financial collapse, was a major win for banks. It raised the threshold for oversight from $50 billion to $250 billion in assets, allowing dozens of banks to escape federal scrutiny. This deregulation was cheered by lobbyists from the banking sector, many of whom had direct access to the Trump administration. Citigroup, J.P. Morgan Chase, and Wells Fargo all benefited. Mick Mulvaney, who briefly ran the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, openly told bankers, "If you're a lobbyist who never gave us money, I didn't talk to you." Money spoke. Policy followed. Trump frequently attacked Big Pharma, accusing them of price gouging and promising to lower drug prices. But the reality was more complex. Though a few executive orders were signed, many had little lasting effect. Meanwhile, Big Pharma lobbyists spent over $280 million during Trump's presidency, more than any other industry. The Trump administration's attempt to repeal the Affordable Care Act was heavily influenced by conservative think tanks like the Heritage Foundation and FreedomWorks, both with ties to pharmaceutical and insurance money. And while Trump made headlines for pushing for price transparency, the policies were often watered down or blocked by courts after industry pushback. The system stayed intact. Drug prices remained high, and the influence of pharmaceutical companies remained unshaken. Trump's alliance with evangelical leaders was one of political convenience, but it shaped key parts of his legislative agenda. Groups like the Family Research Council and Liberty Council wielded influence on abortion policies, LGBTQ+ rights, religious freedom laws. In exchange for their loyalty, Trump delivered. Conservative judges like Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett expanded conscience protections for religious groups. The Mexico City policy, blocking foreign aid to NGOs that performed or promoted abortion. This was not just about moral values. It was about power. The religious right saw Trump as a vehicle for reshaping the courts and embedding Christian nationalist ideals into federal law. Trump campaigned on ending forever wars, but the defense budget grew. Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Boeing all thrived under Trump. Billions were spent on fighter jets, missiles, and troop expansions. Arms deals with Saudi Arabia reached over $110 billion, despite global outrage over the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Behind the scenes, former defense lobbyists worked in the Pentagon and National Security Council. The revolving door between government and industry spun freely. Even drone strikes increased during Trump's first years, many carried out with minimal transparency. The war machine rolled on, even as Trump claimed peace. While the public focused on Trump's tweets, scandals, and rallies, the real power plays happened behind closed doors. Theatrics served a purpose. Outrage kept the public distracted. Donald Trump promised to upend the establishment, but in many ways he empowered it. The hidden hands that shaped policy, the donors, the lobbyists, the corporations, remained intact. Some even grew stronger. His presidency was not the end of the swamp. It was a mirror showing us how deep the swamp truly goes. Because in American politics, power rarely changes hands. It only changes form. If you found this video insightful, consider subscribing for more deep dives into politics, media, and hidden power. Leave a comment below. Who do you think really runs America? Until next time, stay informed and stay questioning.